Hello and welcome to the studio. I'm Mark Chillingworth and we're discussing unearthing the real value of the multi-cloud. And please welcome my panel, which includes Neil Trevains, Solutions Architect at Cisco, Caroline Carruthers, my apologies, Lee Fulmer, who leads the data board at the Bank of England, and Caroline is a leading author on data and all things change and technology. Thank you for joining me. I'm going to jump straight in with the questions. Are organisations struggling to match their cloud costs to the value that their businesses expect technology and IT to be delivering? As someone who sits on a board that probably no doubt analyses these things all day, every day, I'm going to start with you, if I may, Lee.
Of course. So the short answer is yes. I think people are struggling. I've been working in financial services for over 20 years now, and I have been listening to the cloud journey for a decade. And I think the reality of the situation is in the last 5-6 years, a lot of CEOs have come out making these blanket statements that we're going to move all our workload to cloud the next 3 years, or we're going to move 50% of our level to cloud in the next few years. And it's been almost a mantra from the investment community and the shareholders. But the reality is that migrating large complex systems to a totally new platform is very, very complicated and doesn't actually release any sizable business value, because during that time you're doing the re-engineering exercise, you're not adding any additional client value. You're not adding any additional business enhancements. And you're basically reskilling your workforce, who in many cases then go off somewhere else and make more money.
So I'm going to jump in a little bit there. So you know, Lee, I love you to pieces and normally I agree with you, but on this particular one, I think it's the cloud journey, I love the way you put it in inverted commas, is an important one. But the way we talk about it, the fact we talk about we want to move to the cloud, actually do you? You want to have your data and your systems flexible and be able to accessible. That's what we should be talking about. And sometimes I think we forget the purpose of what we're trying to do. So I agree with the rest of what you said, but I think if we understand there is a value to it, we just don't normally talk about it.
I think that's a fair point. And I do have use cases where I have done things on cloud and it was much more cost effective. So building new systems, building things where you have hugely flexible compute, right? You might have peaks that there's no way you could afford the hardware to do that yourself, and it would be lying fallow most of the time. I think a lot of the cloud journey over the last 3 to 5 years in particular has been driven by ESG, right? If we get our data centers downsized, then our CO2 footprint goes down and then we look better outside. But you're just shifting it to someone else.
Exactly, you're just passing on the problem, because you might take your data center, but you're just feeding an immense data center somewhere else.
Yeah, I've spent most of my IT career as a customer, and it's the challenge of being able to genuinely go back to the business and say, well, you invested this amount, we told you it would achieve this. This is the reality of what we were able to achieve. And you know, those were 3-year, 5-year capital projects. Now we're talking about billing cycles that are coming in from either service providers in between yourself and the world of hyperscalers. And it is being able to show at a transaction level, not an app level, but a transaction level.
We've lost the discipline of exit planning, right? So again, you go back to the late 90s, early 90s, right? And most big companies at that point had multiple mainframe systems from different providers, and they wanted to collapse them. And so you had to do all the math, right? How are you going to do it? How are you going to move? I mean, back then, a lot of it would have been in COBOL, so it was relatively easy to recompile it. But you had to have that strategy, right, for how you were going to exit. I think we don't do that anymore. The move from mainframe to mid-range to Intel and now to cloud, it's like we just keep burning money, but now we've lost that discipline. And I think if I have one more product person or developer tell me, but why can't I just spin up a container? And it's like, okay, but that's fine. But then when it goes into a production state, right, how are you going to support it? What's it going to look like if we need to shut it down? Maybe the regulators get involved or there's a client issue. You know, how do we get back out? Nobody has that discipline, I think, anymore. And I think we need to bring it back.
We've treated IT in the broadest sense, particularly from an infrastructure perspective, as kind of an all-you-can-eat buffet that just keeps getting filled up, but nobody ever really receives a bill for it at the end of the day. It has to be completely transparent now, end to end, everything that is in play. And part of that transparency is what is it going to cost us? What's the risk? How long is it going to take us if I need to exit out of a particular venue that I'm choosing to execute a critical business or set of critical business applications in? And where there are industries that are regulated, there's more of a requirement for that. But I think just in terms of a general risk appetite of an organisation, you have to be aware of what it's going to take to extricate yourself from that.
To me, it's quite apparent why some of this stuff happened, because remember how originally when we were looking into cloud storage, it was really expensive. Or the on-site storage was really expensive. And all of a sudden, some of the technology advances that we made, it got cheaper and really cheap, and we were watching the price go down. And I think that's the point where we started getting lazy, because we looked like we were doing a really good job when actually we hadn't done very much.
Yeah.
It was just the environment had changed. And then we got suckered into the whole, maybe some of the lazy practices and not caring about exit strategies, which I am a big fan of that phrase. And all of a sudden...
You owe me £1 every time you use it in your book.
He's in banking.
I'll just buy him a drink later, he'll be fine. But then, we get suckered into the world has changed again, the environment's moved back forward, and because we've lost the discipline, we now need to fight to get it back again.
As a vendor, we always will start with the product. Always will start with the product. Rather than opening up with simply asking why. Why do you want to do this? What is the value that you think you're going to achieve by being able to do this? And I think that comes back to the conversations we need to have internally within our organisations. We're expected to be part of that innovation engine of the business, but are often seen as simply a cost. And that's because we haven't articulated well enough what it is that we deliver back. And we've continued to articulate it in that set of technical terms. So these things are exciting and interesting, but that doesn't mean that because they're exciting and interesting for you, that the business fundamentally sees them as exciting and interesting, unless you can translate the things that make you get up in the morning and go to work into something that is advantageous to the organisation that you work for.
I really genuinely do think there's a massive benefit if we do become more back as part of the business. If you think about other departments that provide services to the organisations, like finance, for instance, nobody in finance talks about they talk to the business. They're providing the exact same service, they're in the exact same situation, but they're not suffering from the same thing. Part of it, and I think I can say this because I am a nerd, I'm not even a closet nerd, I'm a complete nerd, is, we got excited about technology, so we took that as a reason to be set apart, and we shouldn't be set apart. The whole goal of every single person in an organisation is for the betterment of that organisation.
Thank you to my panel, and thank you to the audience for your questions, for this really interesting debate on extracting the real value from cloud computing. Thank you for joining us at the studio. A round of applause for my panel, please.